Home isn't always a sanctuary. Sometimes it's hell on earth, and the ones who should protect you become the monsters you fear. Good morning, my dears. This is your grandmother, Geraldine. I have lived 78 long years. My hair, white as winter snow, carries stories many would not dare believe. Today, I sit here on my porch in rural Kentucky, holding my old prayer beads while cicadas sing in the ancient oaks of my yard. And before I take you with me into this painful journey, I must share a little secret. The Grandparents' Tales team is hosting a new giveaway. $500 just for those of you watching. It's simple. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, how many children or grandchildren you have, or just something about yourself. I look forward to reading your stories. It makes me feel less alone knowing you're out there. But now let's go back. Back to 1957. I was 8 years old. I was born on a poor little farm in the Kentucky Appalachians. Our house was made of rough-hewn logs, with a dirt floor, no electricity, no running water. The bathroom was nothing more than an outhouse with a pit in the ground. We bathed in a tin tub filled with water from the creek that trickled nearby. We were a big family, my father, my mother, and 11 children. I was the second youngest. My father worked the land. Corn, beans, potatoes. Enough for us to eat, and if there was extra, he carried it to the town market 5 miles away, in burlap sacks slung across our backs. My mother took in laundry for wealthier families in the area. Balancing baskets of clothes on her head as she walked home, her feet blistered, her back bent. And yet, despite the hardship, there were moments of sweetness. I remember playing with my younger siblings beneath the apple trees, making dolls out of corn husks, catching tiny fish in the creek. Our food was simple: cornbread with greens, beans with cornmeal, sometimes a scrap of salted pork if we were lucky. But we never starved. My parents worked too hard to let that happen. I went to school only when I could, in a makeshift classroom inside the local church. I learned to read, to write, to do basic sums. But at 9 years old, my schooling ended. There were too many mouths to feed, too many chores. I had to stay home to help raise the younger children, to fetch water, to help in the fields, to scrub laundry on the river stones with my mother. Then, when I was 10, everything changed. My father died. He was bitten by a copperhead while working in the field. There was no time, no way to get him to the hospital in town. He collapsed right there, his body convulsing in the dirt, his last breath slipping away in my mother's arms while my brother Sebastian, only 19 then, watched helplessly. From that day on, nothing was ever the same. Sebastian became the man of the house. He was already a mason in town, earning a little money, but not enough to feed 13 mouths. My mother doubled her labor, washing clothes from dawn to night. My other brothers, Anthony 17, Joseph 16, Francis 15, were forced to find work too. The house grew silent without father. He had been a hard man like most in those days, but he never raised his hand against us. He ruled with respect. With him gone, the walls of our home seemed to sag under the weight of disorder. Sebastian started drinking. He came home smelling of whiskey, his voice loud, his words sharp. He shouted at us, shouted at mother. Poor woman, already so tired, her hands raw from scrubbing laundry. She just bowed her head, swallowed her tears, and took it. She feared losing even the little money he brought. Then, on the night I turned 12, my nightmare began. Mother had left to care for an employer who was sick. That night, I was sleeping in the room with my sisters Mary, 14, April, 13, and my baby brother Peter, just 6. I woke to the smell of whiskey, of sweat, of tobacco. A rough hand pressed over my mouth. It was Sebastian. "If you scream, I'll hurt Peter," he whispered. And then it happened. I won't speak the details. You can imagine what a 12-year-old girl, not even understanding her own body, suffered in that dark room. There was pain, so much pain. Not only in my body but in my soul. When he was done, he leaned close. His eyes glinted in the dark. "This stays between us. If you tell anyone, no one will believe you. And I'll make it worse." The next morning, I could not look my mother in the eyes. Shame burned hotter than the August sun. I thought it was only once, that he had been drunk, that it would never happen again. But I was wrong. The next week it happened again. And again. Always at night. Always with the same threat. Always with the same pain. Months later, I noticed Mary acting strange, crying without reason, avoiding being home alone, hiding bloodstained sheets. That's when I realized it wasn't just me. Sebastian was doing it to her too. I tried once to tell my mother. After one especially brutal night, I found the courage as we hung laundry. "Mom, Sebastian, he does bad things to me at night," I whispered. She froze, staring into the horizon for what felt like forever. Then she turned back, her voice flat. "Better you than me, girl. That's how men are. Learn to bear it quietly." Her words cut deeper than any blow. My own mother knew, and she chose silence. By the time I was 13, it wasn't just Sebastian. Anthony began. Then Joseph. Then Francis. One after another, my brothers used me like I was nothing more than a thing. When I cried or resisted, they struck me. Slaps, punches, yanking my hair. "Learn not to complain," they said. "Women are supposed to be quiet." At school, if anyone noticed my bruises, I lied. Falling accidents, clumsy stumbles. Teachers looked suspicious, but in those days no one interfered in family matters. The nightmare deepened. Sebastian lost his job from drinking. Anthony gambled. Joseph was arrested for fighting. Francis turned to liquor too. The weight of survival crushed my mother until she aged years and months. But she never stopped them. By 14, even the younger brothers began. One by one, as if it was their right. I was trapped. A prisoner in my own home, betrayed by blood. Mary tried to run once. They dragged her back. April married at 14 to a man more than twice her age, just to escape. But she only entered another prison, for her husband beat her too. Church became my only refuge. I sat in the last pew silent where no one could touch me. Father Anthony, the old priest, noticed. One day after Mass he asked gently, "Child, I see you here every day. Is everything all right at home?" The truth trembled on my lips, but fear sealed them shut. If my brothers ever found out, they would kill me. So I just smiled weakly and said I liked the peace of church. By 16, my life was nothing but labor, pain, tears, and prayers for a miracle that never came. Until one day I noticed something terrifying. My monthly bleeding, never regular, was missing for 2 months. My body was changing. My belly, once thin, showed a small swell. I was pregnant. And the worst part, I had no idea which brother was the father. I tried to hide it with loose clothes with belts around my waist. But by 5 months the truth was undeniable. That's when my mother noticed. "You whore," she spat, slapping me so hard I fell to the floor. "Offering yourself to men, bringing another mouth we can't feed." I tried to explain it wasn't my choice, it was my own brother's. But she didn't want to hear. Blaming me was easier than facing the horror her sons had become. When my brothers found out, it was even worse. They mocked me, sneered, pretended disgust. Not one of them admitted the truth. At night, when everyone else slept, I still felt their footsteps in the dark. The abuse stopped during the pregnancy. Maybe they feared hurting the baby, maybe my body no longer tempted them. But the humiliation grew. I was treated like filth, like the sinner, even though I was the victim. And yet, through it all, I began to feel something I had never felt before. A small warmth, a fragile hope growing inside me. Despite the horror, I loved the child. This baby was mine. The only person in the world who would truly belong to me. I thought the worst was behind me. I thought the child's birth would be my salvation. But I was wrong. The worst was yet to come. My belly grew larger each day, like a clock ticking toward a verdict I couldn't escape. The final months of pregnancy were the loneliest of my life. My family treated me as if I carried a disease. At meals I ate last with whatever scraps remained. At work, no one eased my burden. Pregnant or not, I hauled buckets of water from the creek, scrubbed clothes raw on the washboard, bent my aching back in the fields. It was 1965 by then. I was 16. Other girls my age walked past our farm with books in their hands, headed to school. Some even held hands with boys, giggling, dreaming of marriage. Meanwhile, I carried inside me not just a baby, but a secret that burned me alive. A secret that could destroy me if it was ever spoken aloud. The only place I found comfort was the church. I snuck there at dawn before the others woke, or late in the evening, pretending to gather firewood. I sat in the last pew, whispering prayers I didn't even know how to form. I didn't know if God was listening, but it was the only place I felt safe for a few hours. Father Anthony noticed. His eyes, soft and kind, seemed to see right through me. One afternoon he found me weeping after Massachusetts. "Geraldine," he said gently, laying a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever happens, God has not abandoned you. And neither have I." The words nearly broke me. The truth trembled on my lips, ready to pour out. But then I remembered my brother's threats, my mother's silence, and the tiny life that depended on me. If I spoke, I could lose everything. So I swallowed the confession, thanked him for his kindness, and walked back to the prison I called home. That winter in Kentucky was cruel. Nights were bitterly cold, and I was forced to sleep on the kitchen floor with only a thin blanket. My swollen body ached from labor and pregnancy. My feet were so puffed with swelling I could hardly fit them into my worn-out shoes. One night, as I lay half asleep, I overheard voices outside the window. It was Sebastian and Anthony, standing in the yard, their breath visible in the frosty air. "When the baby comes, we'll have to get rid of it," Sebastian muttered, his tone flat, heavy with whiskey. Anthony agreed. "If anyone sees a girl her age with a child, they'll start asking questions. We'll say it was born dead. Bury it in the woods, and that'll be the end of it." My blood turned to ice. I clutched my belly tight, as if my arms alone could shield my unborn child from their cruelty. In that moment I made a vow. Whatever it took, I would protect my baby. I began planning in secret. I stashed crumbs of bread, a few coins, scraps of cloth. I hid a dull kitchen knife beneath loose boards in the barn. I didn't know how I would use them, but I knew I had to be ready. My mother had grown gaunt and gray, her hands trembling from years of endless labor. She looked at me with eyes drained of tenderness. One night, as I groaned from the pain in my back, she said coldly, "You'll give birth in the barn. I don't want blood and dirt in this house." Her words hit me like a slap. To her I was no more than livestock. But I didn't argue. I couldn't. I just nodded and swallowed my pride. Days dragged. The baby kicked harder, as if restless to leave that place. Maybe she felt my fear. Maybe she was trying to reassure me with those tiny movements, as if to say, "I'm here, Mama. Don't give up." Then came the night. I woke with a pain deeper than any I had ever known. Sharp waves tore through my body, pulling me to my knees. I bit down on a rag to keep from screaming. If they heard, they'd come. If they came, my baby might not live. I staggered into the cold night, my breath white in the air, and made my way to the barn. The moon hung full, casting its silver light across the frozen ground. The barn reeked of old straw and manure, its wooden walls splitting with cold drafts. I collapsed on the straw, clutching my belly as the contractions grew closer, harder, merciless. My fingers dug into the dirt floor as though I could hold on to life itself. Hours blurred. Pain and exhaustion rolled over me in waves. At dawn the moment came. A scream tore from my throat, muffled by the rag. And then relief. A tiny squirming body slid into the world, covered in blood and the waxy film of birth. She cried. A thin, fragile cry that pierced the barn air like music. A girl. My girl. With trembling hands, I cut the cord with the rusty knife I had hidden days before. I wrapped her in an old blanket I'd smuggled out. I kissed her damp forehead, whispering through tears, "Hush, little one. Mama's here. Mama will protect you." It was the most impossible promise I'd ever made. But in that moment, I believed it with every beat of my heart. The sun was rising when I heard footsteps. The barn door creaked open. My mother stepped inside, carrying a bucket of water and some rags. Her eyes fell on the baby in my arms. "Is it done?" she asked, her voice like stone. "Yes," I whispered. "It's a girl." She stared at the child for a long moment. For the briefest second, I thought I saw something soften in her gaze, an echo of tenderness. But it vanished quickly. "Clean this up," she ordered. "I don't want anyone asking questions. And find a way to keep that baby quiet." No words of comfort. No touch of love for her granddaughter. Only commands. I did as I was told, though my body screamed with pain, still bleeding from the birth. I washed my daughter in the icy water, her tiny cries shivering in the cold air. She was so small, so perfect. Her fingers curled around mine with a strength that astonished me. Right there in that filthy barn, I baptized her myself, sprinkling water on her forehead. "Mary Elizabeth," I whispered. Elizabeth, for the light you bring into my darkness. Mary, for the mother who suffered too. For 3 months I kept her hidden. By day I left her in the barn while I worked. I slipped away whenever I could to nurse her, to hold her. At night, when the others slept, I brought her inside, curling up with her on the kitchen floor. It was the hardest, most terrifying time of my life. I lived in constant fear of discovery, making excuses, praying desperately that she would not cry when someone passed by. My body was broken, my spirit exhausted, but I endured because of her. Mother must have known. Sometimes, when no one was looking, she left an extra piece of bread or a bit of milk near the barn door. Small gestures that did not erase her betrayal, but in my desperation, I clung to them like lifelines. Father Anthony also seemed to sense a change. When he saw me at church, he looked at me with concern, as if he knew I carried a heavier secret than ever. I thought I could keep Elizabeth safe forever. But secrets have a way of breaking open. And mine was about to explode. The secret I had fought so hard to protect was crumbling around me. 3 months of lies, 3 months of hiding Mary Elizabeth in barns and shadows. It was too fragile a web to hold forever. It happened on a damp spring morning. I was in the barn nursing her when the door creaked open. I froze. My heart nearly stopped beating. It was Francis, my 15-year-old brother. His eyes narrowed when he saw me with the baby pressed to my chest. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. I tried to shield her with my arms, but it was useless. He had already seen. "She's mine," I whispered. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "My daughter." Francis stared, confusion turning to something darker. He smirked, that cruel smirk I knew too well. "So it's true. You've been whoring yourself just like Sebastian said." "No," I cried, shaking my head, tears spilling down my cheeks. "She's not. It wasn't like that." But he didn't listen. He stormed out of the barn, shouting for the others. Within minutes, my brothers surrounded me. Sebastian, Anthony, Joseph, and Francis stood in a circle, glaring at me like a pack of wolves. Elizabeth whimpered in my arms, sensing my fear. Sebastian spat on the ground. "I told you we should have ended this before it started." "No," I screamed, clutching my baby tight. "You can't touch her. She's innocent." "Innocent?" Joseph sneered. "You think anyone in this family gets to be innocent? Look at her. That baby is a problem. And we don't need any more mouths to feed." My knees shook. I pressed Elizabeth closer, whispering, "Don't cry, baby, don't cry." That's when my mother appeared in the doorway. She looked at me, then at the men towering around me. For a moment, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe she would defend me, defend her granddaughter. But she didn't. Her face was pale cold. "Take the child away before the neighbors start asking questions." My breath caught. "Mama, please. She's all I have." "You should have thought of that before you spread your legs," she said bitterly. The world spun. My own mother had condemned me. Sebastian stepped forward, reaching for Elizabeth. I screamed and stumbled back. My heel caught on a loose board and I nearly fell. My brothers laughed, their faces twisted with something savage. It was then that Mary Elizabeth wailed, loud and piercing, as if she knew her life hung by a thread. The sound sliced through the air like a blade. And suddenly something inside me broke free. "No!" I shouted, a voice I barely recognized ripping from my throat. "You will not touch her." The barn fell silent for a second. My brothers stared, shocked by the fire in my voice. I had never defied them. Not once. That silence was my chance. I bolted, clutching Elizabeth to my chest, running out of the barn barefoot. The cold mud stung my feet, but I didn't care. I ran past the house, through the fields, toward the road that led into town. My lungs burned, my arms ached, but fear drove me forward. Behind me, I heard Sebastian shouting, "Get her!" I didn't dare look back. The road stretched ahead, winding through the hills. My legs threatened to collapse, but I forced them to move. Elizabeth cried in my arms, her tiny fists clenched. "It's okay, baby," I gasped. "Mama's here. Mama's gonna save you." I didn't know where I was running. The town was miles away. I had no food, no money, nothing but the baby in my arms and the will to keep her alive. But I couldn't stop. Not when their voices grew closer, their footsteps pounding the dirt behind me. I stumbled down a slope, branches tearing at my skin. My bare feet bled from the rocks. My body, still weak from childbirth, screamed with pain. But I clung to Elizabeth like she was the only reason I had to breathe. And maybe she was. The woods swallowed me. I ducked behind thick brush, crouching low, my heart hammering. My brother's voices echoed through the trees. She went this way. Split up. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't find me. Elizabeth whimpered softly. I rocked her gently, tears streaming down my face. Please, baby, please stay quiet. Please. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, their voices grew distant. They had moved deeper into the woods. I exhaled shakily, pressing my forehead to Elizabeth's. We're safe for now, I whispered. But deep inside I knew it wouldn't last. They would keep hunting me. And if they found me, they'd kill her. I had to make a choice. I could try to hide forever, moving from place to place, but I was only 16 with no way to survive. Or I could do the unthinkable, trust someone. There was only one person I dared to hope might believe me. Father Anthony. The thought sent a flicker of warmth through the cold terror in my veins. He had always looked at me with compassion, as if he saw the truth I couldn't speak. If anyone would help me, it was him. But going to him meant telling everything, breaking the silence, risking the wrath of my family. I looked down at Elizabeth, her tiny chest rising and falling against mine. Her life was worth more than my fear. I stood, trembling but determined. The church was in town, several miles away. My body ached, my feet bled, but I turned toward the faint path that led to the road. I'll get you there, I whispered to her. I swear it. The morning sun broke through the trees as I stumbled onward, the weight of both terror and hope pressing on me. And as I limped toward the town, I knew this was just the beginning, because once I reached Father Anthony, there would be no turning back. The road into town felt endless. My arms were numb from holding Mary Elizabeth, my legs raw and trembling, but the fire inside me refused to let me stop. Each step was a war. By the time the church steeple finally came into view through the mist, my body nearly collapsed. I stumbled up the worn stone steps, clutching Elizabeth close, and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the air smelled of candle wax and incense. The silence pressed around me, broken only by the echo of my footsteps. Father Anthony stood near the altar, arranging hymnals. His gray hair caught the sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. He turned, and when his eyes met mine, I broke. "Child," he whispered, hurrying down the aisle. "What happened to you?" I sank onto the pew, sobbing uncontrollably. My baby squirmed, fussing in my arms. Father Anthony sat beside me, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "Tell me," he said softly. "Whatever it is, you are safe here." The words cracked something inside me. Years of silence, fear, and shame burst out in a flood. I told him everything. The nights. My brothers. My mother's coldness. The threats. The pregnancy. And finally, their plan to kill Elizabeth. I expected disbelief. Maybe even judgment. But Father Anthony's eyes filled with tears. He pressed a trembling hand to his mouth, whispering, "Dear God." When I finished, I collapsed against the pew, empty and shaking. Elizabeth whimpered, as if she too carried the weight of my confession. "You are not to blame," Father Anthony said firmly, gripping my hand. "You hear me? None of this is your fault." I wanted to believe him, but shame still coiled around my heart like barbed wire. "What do I do?" I whispered. "They'll come for us. I know they will." He sat back, his brow furrowed. "The law in Kentucky. It's complicated. Child protection as you know it today barely exists. But I cannot let them harm you or this child. I'll speak to Sheriff Miller. He's a good man, a fair man. Perhaps." "No," I cried, clutching Elizabeth tighter. "If the sheriff tells my family, they'll kill us before anyone can stop them." Father Anthony hesitated, torn. Finally he sighed. "Then we must be careful. You and the baby will stay here for now. There's a small room behind the sacristy. It isn't much, but it's safe. No one will harm you under God's roof." Relief washed over me, but it was tangled with dread. My family would notice my absence. They'd come searching. Still, for the first time in years, I felt a spark of safety. That night, I lay on a thin cot in the little room, Elizabeth nestled against me. For the first time, I dared to dream of a future. Maybe, just maybe, she could grow up away from that nightmare house. Maybe we could start over. But my peace didn't last long. The next evening, as Father Anthony finished locking up the church, I heard a knock at the heavy door. My chest tightened. Voices. Male voices. I crept to the small window in the sacristy and peeked through. My blood turned to ice. Sebastian, Joseph, Anthony. They stood outside the church, their faces hard, their eyes scanning the building like hunters scenting prey. I clutched Elizabeth, my breath shallow. Father Anthony's voice boomed from the other side of the door. "What business do you have here at this hour?" Sebastian sneered. "We're looking for our sister. Seems she ran off. And she took something that belongs to us." My stomach churned. Belongs to us. That's how they saw me. That's how they saw my child. "You will not find her here," Father Anthony said, his tone firm. "Now leave before I call the sheriff." Anthony growled. "She's our blood. Our responsibility. You've got no right to hide her." "I have every right," Father Anthony snapped. "This is God's house. And under his roof she is under his protection." For a tense moment no one spoke. Then Sebastian laughed, low and dangerous. "We'll see about that." Their footsteps retreated, crunching on the gravel path. But his words lingered like a shadow. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the cot, rocking Elizabeth, listening for footsteps outside. Days passed. Father Anthony kept me hidden, bringing food and water, praying with me when I could barely hold myself together. But I could feel the storm gathering. My family wouldn't give up so easily. And then it happened. One night, just past midnight, I woke to the sound of shattering glass. Elizabeth stirred in my arms, whimpering. My heart leapt into my throat. Through the crack of the door I saw flickering light. The smell of smoke seeped into the room. They had set the church on fire. I clutched Elizabeth, trembling. Flames licked the wooden beams, the smoke thickening. Panic surged through me. From the nave I heard Father Anthony shouting, coughing, calling out my name. "Geraldine! Get out! Run!" But where? Where could I go? The fire roared louder, devouring the sanctuary. Elizabeth wailed, her tiny body shaking in my arms. I pressed her close, whispering desperately, "Hold on, baby, hold on." And as the smoke closed in, I realized I was standing at another crossroads. Stay and risk burning alive. Or run into the night. Straight into the hands of the men who wanted my baby dead. Either choice could kill us. And I had only seconds to decide. Smoke clawed at my throat, filling my lungs with fire. Elizabeth cried against my chest, her tiny fists pressing into me as if begging me to choose right. I didn't think. I just ran. I shoved open the back door of the sacristy, stumbling into the freezing Kentucky night. The fire painted the sky orange behind me, sparks flying upward like wicked stars. My heart pounded as I clutched Elizabeth tight and darted into the shadows of the trees. The cold air seared my lungs, but at least it was air. I gulped it down, my body trembling as I pushed deeper into the woods. Then I heard it, men shouting. My brothers' voices, rough and drunken, carried on the night wind. "She's here somewhere. Find her." Elizabeth whimpered and I pressed her against me, whispering desperately, "Please, baby, stay quiet. Please." The crunch of boots on leaves drew closer. Panic thrashed in my chest. I ducked behind a thick oak, holding my breath, rocking my baby gently to keep her still. My whole body shook with fear. The voices passed, fading deeper into the woods. I waited, barely breathing, until I could no longer hear them. Then I ran again, slipping on wet leaves, stumbling over roots. My bare feet bled, but I kept going. Hours later, or maybe only minutes, I couldn't tell, I burst into a clearing. The moonlight revealed a dirt road stretching into the darkness. I had no idea where it led, but it was away. Away from fire, away from my brothers, away from hell. I followed it. By dawn my legs gave out. I collapsed beside an old fence, cradling Elizabeth, rocking her as exhaustion pulled at me. My body begged me to sleep, but terror kept my eyes wide open. Where could I go? Father Anthony was gone, or worse. The church was burning, maybe already ashes. My family was hunting me. I had no friends, no money, no place to hide. But then a memory came, faint but stubborn. A woman named Clara. She had been kind to me once, years earlier, When my mother took me into town to wash clothes for rich families. Clara lived near the edge of town, a widow with no children of her own. She had slipped me a biscuit once, whispering, "Keep your strength, honey. Don't let this world take it from you." Maybe she was still there. Maybe she'd help. Clutching Elizabeth, I forced myself to my feet and staggered toward town. It took me most of the day, my body dragging like lead, but by late afternoon I reached the familiar dirt lane lined with apple trees. Clara's house was small, whitewashed, with a porch swing that creaked in the wind. I knocked weakly. The door opened and there she was, older, grayer, but still with those warm, kind eyes. She froze when she saw me. "Geraldine," she whispered. "Lord have mercy, child, what happened to you?" The words broke me all over again. I fell into her arms, sobbing, holding Elizabeth between us. Clara didn't ask questions right away. She just held me, rocking me like I was the child. She brought me inside, sat me by the fire, fed me warm milk and cornbread while I nursed Elizabeth. My body shook with relief as the warmth seeped into my frozen bones. Finally, Clara sat across from me, her face serious. "Now tell me everything. Don't hold back." And I did. The words poured out, jagged and raw. By the time I finished, Clara's face was pale, her hands trembling. "I knew your family had troubles," she whispered. "But dear God, I never imagined." She shook her head. "You can't go back there, Geraldine. You and this baby, you'll die if you do." "I know," I said softly. "But where do I go? What can I do?" Clara's eyes hardened with resolve. "You'll stay here. For now. I'll keep you safe." Relief crashed over me so hard I nearly fainted. For the next few weeks, Clara sheltered me. She gave me clothes, food, a bed to sleep in. Elizabeth thrived, her tiny cheeks filling out, her eyes brightening. For the first time, I felt like a mother, not just a broken girl holding on to survival. But danger still lurked outside. Clara warned me not to go into town. "Your brothers are asking questions," she said one morning, her lips tight. "They're telling folks you're crazy, that you ran off and kidnapped your own niece. They're spinning stories to make themselves look clean." The lies burned like acid in my chest. They wanted to erase me, to erase the truth, to make me the villain in my own story. Still I stayed hidden. Until one cold morning, Clara returned from town with worry carved deep in her face. She set down her basket of eggs and gripped my hands. "Child," she whispered, "the sheriff's been talking. He says if he finds you, he'll have no choice but to bring you back to your family. Says the law doesn't give him power to keep you away unless there's proof." My stomach twisted. Proof? What proof could I give, when my own mother had turned her back on me, when the men who hurt me were seen as hard-working sons? I looked at Elizabeth, sleeping peacefully in her basket by the fire. I felt the walls closing in. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the fire, staring at my baby, my mind a storm. What if they found us? What if the sheriff brought me back? My brothers would kill her just like they planned. I whispered to Elizabeth, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I won't let them take you. I'd rather die first." The next day, Clara caught me packing a small bundle of food. "Geraldine, no," she said firmly. "Don't run again. You'll freeze out there." "They'll find us," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't wait here for them to knock down your door." Clara cupped my face in her hands. "Listen to me, child. You are not alone anymore. If they come, we'll fight. But don't you dare give up." Her words steadied me. For a while. But 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of wheels crunching on gravel outside. My heart dropped. I rushed to the window. A wagon. Lanterns swinging. And then voices. Male voices. They were here. Elizabeth stirred, sensing my fear. Clara rushed into the room, her face pale. "They've come," she whispered. We held our breath as heavy fists pounded on the door. "Open up." Sebastian's voice roared. "We know she's in there." Elizabeth cried out, her wail slicing through the silence. The pounding grew louder. The door shook on its hinges. And in that moment I knew our fragile safety was gone. The door rattled like it was about to splinter. Sebastian's voice thundered through the cold night. "Open it, Clara, or we'll break it down." Elizabeth cried harder, her tiny fists flailing. I pressed her against my chest, whispering, "Hush, baby, please." But my trembling hands betrayed me. Clara grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace, her eyes blazing. You get behind me, Geraldine. If they try to force their way in, they'll have to come through me first. The pounding grew louder. Wood cracked. A hinge groaned. My blood turned to ice. And then another voice cut through the chaos. Sheriff, open up. The pounding stopped. Silence fell, heavy as stone. Through the window I saw lantern light shifting. A second wagon had pulled up, and Sheriff Maddox climbed down, flanked by 2 deputies. He looked tired, wary, but his presence was undeniable authority. What in God's name is going on here? He demanded. Sebastian's slurred voice tried to spin the lie. Sheriff, that girl's crazy. She ran off with my niece, and we're here to bring her home where she belongs. Clara yanked the door open, standing tall despite her shaking hands. Don't you listen to them, Sheriff. That baby's hers. And those men? She jabbed the poker toward my brothers. They've been tormenting her since she was a child. I'll swear it before God himself. The sheriff's eyes flicked to me, where I stood clutching Elizabeth. My face burned under his gaze, shame and terror crashing over me. Is that true, Geraldine? He asked gently. My throat closed. For a moment I couldn't speak. But then I looked down at Elizabeth, her tear-streaked face, her trust in me. And something inside me broke free. Yes, I whispered, my voice shaking but steady. It's true. They hurt me. All of them. For years. And now they want to take my baby. Please, Sheriff, don't let them. The silence that followed felt endless. My brothers shifted, muttered, cursed under their breath. Sebastian sneered. She's lying, Sheriff. She's nothing but a filthy. Enough, the sheriff snapped, his hand on his revolver. You'll all come with me. Every last one of you. We'll let the judge sort this out. Sebastian tried to protest, but the deputies stepped forward, rifles ready. One by one my brothers were disarmed, shackled, shoved toward the wagon. Their curses filled the night, but for the first time, I felt the tide turning. Still doubt not at me. Would the law believe me? Would the court see me as a victim or as the liar my brothers painted me to be? The sheriff must have read my fear, because he gave me a long, steady look. You'll be safe tonight, Geraldine. You and the baby. That much I swear. The weeks that followed were a blur of questions, statements, and hearings. For the first time in my life, people listened. Clara stood by my side at every meeting. Father Anthony's absence was a wound that never healed, but his kindness gave me courage. Some neighbors came forward with suspicions they had buried for years. A teacher recalled my bruises. A storekeeper remembered seeing my mother buying whiskey with Sebastian's wages while I trailed behind, hollow-eyed. Slowly a picture formed. A picture too dark to ignore. It wasn't easy. My mother testified against me, her words sharp as knives. She called me a liar, a temptress, a shame on the family. Her betrayal cut deeper than any wound my brothers had ever inflicted. But Clara's steady presence, the sheriff's stern testimony, and my own trembling words carried weight. In the spring of 1966, the court ruled in my favor. My brothers were sentenced, some to prison, others to hard labor. It wasn't justice in full, but it was enough to free me. For the first time, I was no longer property of my family's cruelty. Life after that was not simple. Poverty clung to me like a shadow. Whispers followed me in town. Men looked at me with either pity or suspicion. But I had Elizabeth. My daughter was my reason to keep breathing, to keep fighting. I worked any job I could: laundry, cleaning, picking crops. Clara, God bless her, helped raise Elizabeth, treating her like the granddaughter she never had. Elizabeth grew strong. She had Jake's smile, even though she never knew him. She had my stubbornness too, and a fire in her eyes that gave me hope she would never be broken the way I was. When I turned 18, I packed our meager belongings and moved with her to Louisville. There nobody knew our story. We could start fresh. Now, sitting here on this porch at 78 years old, with the cicadas singing in the trees, I look back at that terrified girl in the woods, clutching her baby in the dark. I want to tell her, you'll survive. You'll fight. You'll find a way to give your child the life you never had. But I also want to tell the world this. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it grows inside your own home, wearing the faces you trusted most. And when your home becomes hell, survival is the bravest act of all. I survived. And so did Elizabeth. And if you're listening to this now, if you're hurting, if you feel trapped, I need you to know. There is a way out. There is light beyond the fire. There is life beyond the pain. You are not alone. Never alone.